Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us this morning for episode 5 of the Paralympian podcast.
The host has started broadcasting the meeting on Facebook.
We have Roy Smith, MBE, with us here this morning. For those of you that I haven't met before, my name's David, and I'll be hosting today's podcast. Just before we start, if I could all please ask you to mute your microphones for the duration of the podcast. If at any point that you do wish to ask Roy a question, it can be done one of two ways. The first way can be done if you raise your hand on screen, and I shall invite you to ask your question to Roy. The second option is via the chat service we have here on the Zoom channel. And then anyone who is listening on Facebook, if you just comment on the live video, I will ask that question to Roy myself. So good morning, Roy. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning, David. Good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to this broadcast.
Brilliant. So, Roy, the first thing, just before we sort of get started with all of the questions, could you just please give a brief introduction to what sport you're involved in, and a little bit about your sort of background, please?
Yes. Good morning, Dave. My background really starts when I was about 21. So around about that period, I was fully sighted. At school, my sports were cycling. I used to cycle to school, football, playing right back, centre half or goalkeeper, and some tennis, because there was loads of tennis courts near where I went to school in Fulham at Bishop's Park. When I went to work, I carried on playing tennis in Battersea Park and carried on cycling and a little bit of football. Then at the age of 21, by that time I was married with a 9-month son. I've been working for about 5 years, and I'm living in Twickenham at the time. And now, unfortunately, I noticed some problem with my eyesight. Went to Moorfields to the National Hospital for Nervous Diseases. And while I was in 3 weeks, the centre of both of my eyes, were damaged, and there's nothing they could do. It was a very rare blood disorder, so I couldn't recognise faces then and people, couldn't read anymore. So my sort of life went a bit upside down. For a period of time while I sort of readjusted. Where I worked were fantastic. I ended up staying there for 44 years, so I obviously got something right. But in that adjustment of, mobility, confidence was shattered, friendship, people not quite understanding living with sight loss, really, which is not only for the person with the sight loss, but also the family around you. My wife coming to terms with it, my parents, took it personally. And so a major adjustment. And I think part of that adjustment, which is where, the last 50 years has taken me on this journey has been sport, whether that's been being part of the expansion and the sort of purple period of Metro, and also help setting up British Blind Sport, or BASRAB at the time, being on one of the first trustees of that, then working with the National Paralympic Committee in getting more people with sight loss to Paralympics, Worlds and Europeans. So that was my journey. It really, I think for sport, was my survival. It's been my way really of coping in many ways, because it encouraged me to go out, to travel, to meet new people, to try new things. Whereas, otherwise one could come very depressed, very isolated, as I've met many people with, that unfortunately have not been so lucky to meet people or have the confidence or the support, really, in some ways, to venture out and explore the fantastic world of sport and activities.
It's fantastic that you able to overcome that massive change in your life, Roy. Especially when at 21 years of age you're sort of preparing really for the rest of your life, and to have that in essence sort of changed quite dramatically. It must have been very difficult
Yes.
to deal with. But full credit to yourself. You know, you've been able to use sport as a tool to build confidence. So, while we're on that sort of topic, what were your sort of earliest memories of playing sport or starting to participate in sport as a visually impaired person? Because obviously growing up you were very active. So,
The first days, David, were really five-a-side football and cricket in Regent's Park, playing on the open cricket pitches there, where a few times the ball went into the lake. As you know, at that time we were playing with a size 5 football with ball bearings in it, went down to a size 3. So there was loads of fun. I mean, I think sport is obviously divided up, or quite often, as I know you as a rugby person, but in team sports and individual sports. So I started enjoying the team sports, and then I moved into an individual sport, as in high jump. So when my love of the sport with Metro, it took me to athletics, meeting other people, and then deciding what sport I'd like to take on as a challenge myself. I mean, at this time I'd stopped cycling solo. Obviously I didn't have enough sites, and tried tandem riding, but the sport I got as an individual was high jump. And I went along to Crystal Palace, got an international pass, made good contacts there with coaches that were coaching internationals at the time, and didn't look back then. Ended up, from one minute I'm maybe training 2 or 3 times a week, and next minute I'm in training 11 times a week, like double sessions on the weekends. But at the same time, full-time job and a family man. So traveling from Twickenham to Crystal Palace was an enjoyable challenge, because the rewards, when you notice that you improve, then you're encouraged to go on. We all talk about our PB, so it's jumping higher or going faster or jumping longer, so that it's easy to know where your sort of standard, or where your achievements, your goals are, and the fun of being around, integrated into able-bodied, really, into sighted athletes again was I was very much used to. Obviously that was my world. I didn't go through VI schools or colleges or universities, so I was back meeting people, but with having to make just certain adjustments.
it must have been extremely difficult as well to sort of manage life around being almost a full-time athlete and having a full-time job, particularly in today's society. Athletes are just able to focus on that one thing about training and performing, where you didn't necessarily have that luxury. You had to also juggle your full-time employment as well.
Yeah, absolutely, David. I think it depends which level you want to be at, isn't it? If you're just having a go at doing a bit of football and a bit of cricket and a bit of running or a bit of cycling, but if you want the sort of the rewards of being selected internationally, then the sacrifice of, again, what you're eating, what you're drinking, your diet, your control of your strength work. So the sessions sometimes became gym works, going for a run, trying to find a safe place to run, using my lunch times for maybe a half an hour workout, around Victoria, again in the evenings, going straight to Crystal Palace from work. But at the same time, I was also going to college. I was also trying to retrain as a health and safety officer, a procurement officer, and a facilities manager. So I was trying to get exams in all 3 to further my career, getting support at work, and so they were very keen to me. I was training to be a surveyor, a building surveyor, but obviously they didn't want me to go on sites, building sites anymore, and I think they were likely they were right. I think the health and safety and helmets and so no, so I became very much office based, but that allowed me to do a lot of communication work. I produced BASRAB newsletters at work on the fast photocopiers we had and put things into larger print, and it allowed to use the conference rooms of committees. I mean, later in life, you know, the company I worked for had an overseas offices, and I remember using the office in Berlin to run the Berlin Marathon in '91. You know, so, you know, they allowed me to stay over there for a week in the, you know, accommodation over in our German office. So, you know, no, keeping in that job gave me loads of benefits as well.
That's fantastic, Roy. And, you know, while we're sort of on the subject of, you know, traveling, you were, you know, very fortunate enough after all that hard work and dedication to take part in the 1980 Paralympic Games. So could you tell us a little bit about that experience? Because it must have been incredible to...
Yes, just wind back a little bit to '76, which, you know, was the first time that the VI were included in the Paralympics, as in started in '48. My memory of '76 was a little bit of involvement. Guy Willie McLeod in Scotland, the running was only 60 meters and ran one at a time. So I think the event took about 5 hours running people, and then I think that they increased it to the top 6 people ran again. So so to try and even it up. And there was lawn bowls then in the Paralympics in '76 in Canada. And then what's the other events they had there? Certainly the running and bowls. I'm trying to think of what other. Certainly not many of the sort of not long distance and things. So 1980. So that sort of having been around then, and the excitement from that, it spurred me on to get involved. In '77, there was the first unofficial Europeans in '77 in Poland. Again, a little bit I was involved with that, but again, people that went to that, and in the sort of '76 one was people really that could afford to pay their own costs as well. So, you know, guide dogs sent some people, the RNB sent some people. So in 1979, yeah, I got selected for the Paralympics, and yeah, absolutely fantastic. Now, again, in the world, the 1980 was actually in Moscow, the Olympics. America pulled out because of the conflict between Russia at the time, but the famous story from that was obviously Ovet and Co in the 800 and the 1500 meter, where they sort of both won a gold in each. And fortunately, the Russians at the time didn't have active disability sport at any national or international level, and Holland stepped in as part of the Paralympic movement, did a national bingo competition, raised £7 million, and adapted an army base in Arnhem, and there was a 400 meter running track there. So, and I revisit this 40 years later. I revisit it in my last November to go back to the track still there. It's a blue track now, 8 lanes and an extension for sprinters as well. So no, the 1980, the day of the competition was interesting. Yeah, there was sort of showers and things. Again, high jump is based, you know, people work up in different heights as people carry on coming in. I'd been practicing with sort of, the top men came in far too high for me. So I started training with in the women's group, which was not, I mean, still their standard was still better than mine, but at least gave me more opportunity to get into sort of competition and into that progression of, you know, starting the bar at, say, you know, 150 and then going to 155, 160, 165, 70, you know, which is really what I got up to, about 170 and 173 in training, 175 maximum. So it's that opportunity where people, you know, come in, and I experimented with, you know, with using a support at the post so I could direct and marking. I had a tape measure so I could accurately mark my run up, and it went very, very well. I was really, really pleased. I realised that then the it's a good opportunity to realise, you know, the standard there is out there, and then it encouraged me to work even harder. You know, and the next year I went to the Europeans in Fulda in '81, and again enjoyed the experience, and again was building up. But I'd come to unfortunately high jump in my late 20s, so time was ticking away, and like we spoke about, I had other commitments. My son was at the same time getting quite demanding, and so. But no, the Paralympics was a fantastic honour. You know, really delighted to be asked to represent Great Britain, and you know, was a wonderful trip, and I think I'm indebted to the Dutch, to the Netherlands, for staging these games. You know, for people with sight loss.
Yeah, it's, I mean, it's you know, quite a fantastic sort of story how the Netherlands stepped in and sort of took that leap, really, where Russia weren't prepared to do. You know, when we look at the new Netflix documentary that's just been released called Rising Phoenix, it sort of highlights that period of time quite a lot, which is very interesting. You know, and you were part of something great there. So when we look back now on your sporting career as a whole, Roy, do you have any sort of regrets or wish you had done anything differently? If so, what would they be?
So I mentioned 81, and then 83, we took our first purple patch team. We'd done a lot of work, BBS, with working with schools and colleges. There was a very, very active school college in Coventry, at, which we did work. We were very, very lucky to get the guy in charge of leisure and sport, John Anderson, who at the time had coached Moorcroft to a world record in the 5,000 metres, and Liz McColgan, and Kimio Rickett, who worked alongside John at the leisure centre at Nuneaton. They got involved with blind sport and brought along other coaches, level 4s, master coaches, to work with the VI. So when we started getting involved in 83 and 84, we were much more better trained and much more, we started having better equipment. John had very good connections with Adidas, so the whole standard became, well, the whole unit became extremely professional. I suppose my regret is that it came a little bit too late for me. And as John took me to one side one day, he said, look, you're never really gonna ever succeed because you're not selfish enough. But I don't think I'd ever change that. He said, you're too much of a team person. You're too much want to be involved in raising the money to get people to these events. You're too much interested in organising the weekends and getting people, there's more people and juniors involved. And you've got to really take yourself away from that if you're going to progress. But, you know, but don't change, because, you know, that's how you are. That's your personality, that's your character. So I don't have any really regrets, because I loved it all, and, you know, I enjoyed watching people try, you know, the love of sport for the first time. And we had a policy in BBS at the time that we had sort of two standards. A standard was that, you know, which was like, you know, that it come in the first 6 in the world, and you automatically went. And then if you were a B standard, it was slightly underneath that. And so we always took, obviously, all the A standards, but we always took a few Bs on the premises of up-and-coming talent, to give them a go, a taste it, because once they've experienced that international, they either two things. They either think, oh, it's not for me, or they work even harder and harder and excel. You know, really excel in their individual sport. And again, that paid dividends. I mean, you know, at the time we had, you know, a guy called Bob Matthews, late Bob Matthews, you know, again broke world records after world records in 850. We had Noel Thatcher, Jonathan Ward, Mark Furnell, Simon Butler, Brent. We had a host of people breaking world records all the time in this purple patch in the 80s. We took the whole world by storm and became, you know, England came sort of in the top 2 or 3 in the world, based really on John Anderson and his coaches and that professionalism. and the support, obviously, of BBS. You know, so no regrets, David. No regrets at all.
That's very interesting, Roy. And when you talk about your early years of being involved in team sports, that having that sort of team camaraderie and trying to support one another, that's sort of one of the skills and qualities that people develop through team sports. So it's nice to see that transferred into your individual sporting career. So Roy, obviously, once you hung up your spikes as such and stopped competing competitively, what sort of things did you do to stay active? Because I know now to this day that you still remain active, and that what sort of sports did you try after that, or did you regularly participate in?
I said I competed in '83, and I got my best position then in '83. I was jumping higher than I'd ever jumped high before. Again, I think certainly with the influence of John Anderson and other coaches, and again this professionalism, and I tried even harder. But unfortunately, my son was involved in a nasty road accident and spent the whole of Christmas, spent 3 or 4 months in hospital. He's recovered now. He's perfect now. He's 50 years old now. So, but at the time, he was about 13, 14. I had to quit coaching, training, and be, bedside. But he recovered. BBS asked me if I'd help be chef de mission and take a team to 1984 to the Paralympics in America. Again, very similar to Moscow. Well, not quite the same. Moscow, 84 was Los Angeles, but the disabled went to New York, Long Island. Again, not very good accommodation, not very good track facilities, but no supporters. Exactly the same in Holland. We had nobody supporting it. No crowds really. Only just a few family members that had come out. So a big difference. And then 84, 85, I took a team to Rome. 86, Sweden. 87, I think, Zurich. I took a team to. 89, I went to Moscow. And then really all as helping raising money, providing coaching, providing selection, all with under the sort of BBS umbrella and National Paralympic Committee. So having hung up, I was still heavily involved in, because of my love, in making sure other people enjoyed that thrill and the fun of taking part in sport. And really, question, what did I do? Well, I got into marathon running then, found, I've got and again, that's through true friendship. I was thinking back that, 25, 30 years on, I've still got some of the guides that I was running with them. I put an advert in the local newspaper and, for guide runners, joined 2 or 3 other clubs, cycle clubs around the area so I could find guide runners. This is before Park Run was set up, 20 years ago. So, and I went over did the London, and again had great fun in Berlin. I remember going through Berlin halfway in 1:35, and my guide runner said to me, "Well, that's the easiest half marathon I run. How do you feel?" I said, "I feel great." He said, "Well, let's put cock on." He said, "Let's try and get the 3 hours, 10 minutes we've been aiming for." One of the other questions, Dave, you asked me if any regrets. I'd like to do a marathon and finish it. I finished both of them, but I want to say finish it with my guide runner. Both marathons I ran, my guide runner pulled out either 18 miles or 21 miles. So I then struggled at the end to find somebody to run alongside with and get to the finish line. But so again, no regrets. Fantastic. Loved Berlin. Loved London. Again, fantastic crowds. Both massive events. So, and again, and shared that again, that love of the love of sport with other people, and got other people involved in long distance running, along with park run, etc.
That's incredible, Roy. Obviously, you've mentioned quite a lot of the destinations you've travelled through your work in sport. So out of all of those places you've visited, which place was actually your favourite place?
I think the Dutch people excelled themselves. They just tried to make everybody out there do the best they could. All the volunteers, the hundreds and thousands of volunteers, people converting their sort of coaches. But again, my other thing that I would recommend people to do is cross-country skiing in Norway. You know, I mean, again, because I was enjoying the sort of team thing, I went over as a Great Britain supporter and watched the Winter Olympics for you know, Paralympics with disability. So I watched the blind cross-country ski team in Austria and in Tignes in France, and enjoyed that. And the thrill of the Norwegians, which Metro have been going to for about 45 years now. They're about, I think the Norwegians are providing this service for well over 50 years. And where they provide you with a one-to-one guide for the whole week, you know, so you can go out and do, you know, 20, 30K each day, and then, you know, a race at the end of it. And this one-to-one training, coaching and provision in a 5-star hotel has been, you know, thousands and thousands of people from this country have enjoyed, you know, and there are many other groups that provide, you know, cross-country skiing, able, many now. So that's been a great thrill as well in getting people, you know, that have been isolated or repressed to try a new sport. I mean, I think my obviously buzz, winding back a little bit to the beginning of BBS, the other thing that I also took on was BBS's editor, and I produced a magazine called Participation. And at the time, it was trying to get information out. We managed to raise loads of money with the help of Richard Freeman, selling advertising in there, and we used to have centre pages with a calendar of events on it. And where we at the time we scored is that we got all the VI schools and all the colleges, any of the units, individuals to join. So we had hundreds and thousands of members. I know now it's not so easy to do with groups and things, and most of the VI schools have all closed down. But at the time, in that purple period in the 80s, it was a massive buzz. We had, and again, the Metro Games, the National Athletics Championship in 1977, the explosion from that, by the early 80s, there were 5 National Athletics Championships just for the blind only. You know, so using people's, you know, tracks, as opposed to there was just Stoke Mandeville for people with, you know, with other disabilities. But in the blind, we managed to have, you know, Sazro came on board, the Irish then had their national championship of blind. So the spin-off with the word from, you know, BBS and this is how it can be done was enormous in those 80 periods where we like I said, ended up having 5 national championships. And again, Ron Gordon, again, early trustee guy from, who lived in Manchester, Northern Sports, Manchester's district for VI, did an enormous amount. I mean, the most successful games ever was the Manchester Games. It included so many different sports for VI, and including team sports as well. So the whole thing grew, you know, grew. I mean, goalball grew, judo. I was involved in swimming. So when I got from athletics, I then started, you know, obviously with the Paralympics, involved in all the other sports, and tried to help in growing them. And we had money coming in. Primary Club started investing money, £100,000 a year into blind sport, and still does. You know, about 150,000 cents. You know, we had friends become trustees of Primary Club. Brian Johnson got involved, and so we got money from that. We started being able to use nursery ground at Lords, which gave us, you know, some sort of, you know, really a major stage to highlight, you know, all with BBS, you know, doing the final there at Lord's Cricket Ground. And that just gave us more status. And people like national governing bodies, which started taking over the sport, you know, recognised, you know, the professionalism that we had behind us.
It's incredible to hear there, Roy. You touched briefly there on some of the benefits of, you know, participating in sports. So what do you believe are, you know, the benefits, not just health, but other benefits of participating in sport and physical activity?
Yes, we talked about depression, didn't we? Isolation. We talked about confidence, you know, which you can't buy. So it is that, whether it be an individual or a team thing, I think the benefits, I've been on many marketing and branding programs with Sport England, and talking about, you know, what are the main things about a club, any club, you know, obviously integration into that club, welcome any club, welcome people with a disability along to that club, and just make the event, as we try to make training weekends and events fun. Just have fun events in your program. So if you have fun, especially at children level, they come back. So if you make it fun, so when we used to run events at Arsenal Football Club, have a go days and events there, at the Dockland Sailing Club with Dragon Boat, and just having fun, mixing the people with sight loss with sighted people, so they made good friends. And it's that, meet and greet. I think one of the strengths of Metro was that we always had an opportunity to, wherever we booked an event, ideally near a tube station or a railway station, and everybody met at the ticket barrier, and we all walked to the event and we met people there. So the coaches and the volunteers all got used to this drill of meet and greet, and just lifted people's confidence. They thought, oh, well, if they can do it, I can do it, and I can join in. You hear that story all the time. Oh, I'm not going to be able to find it. I'm not going to be able to get there. And we say, okay, get them to, try and meet up at a tube, and we'll all meet up and we'll all go together. So it was that togetherness that I think it helped people overcome their fears, really. And it is a fear to go out for the first time. It is a fear with that sight loss of, oh, am I going to be able to do it? And again, with excellent coaching, and that's one of the things I encourage Metro members to get to, take level 1, take level 2. So the coaches themselves already knew some of the issues and what adaptations are needed, and the language that you need to use, so people feel relaxed and, when they come along.
It's creating that community, isn't it? Being involved in sport, particularly team sports, there's that almost family culture where everyone will look after one another and be there to support each other. Just creates a wider network, doesn't it?
In a safe environment as well, David, so that you do your risk assessment. So you pick venues where it can be safe. You're aware of some of the issues that that people may come across. So you try and ensure that people feel safe. People are introduced, very much get into that. So as much as there was a sort of sporting element, it became a good social element as well. So people started going out to theatre groups together, to dinners together, to meet up afterwards together, to have a meal after the event. And that became extremely popular in Manchester. Like I said, the games where they had a big sit-down meal afterwards and live music afterwards. So again, had its spin-offs as a social event to be at, not only socially, because that was the place that, to meet other people, but a very, very high quality sort of sporting event as well, and a very, very competitive event. And as people enjoyed, and so Metro became the name of Sport and Social Club. It was so important. So we enjoyed the sort of social side of it, which carried on. I think it's very similar. One of the things, great tennis. I mean, tennis was encouraged so many more women, because women, although we had a few ladies playing, cricket, and maybe a few playing football, when tennis came along, and again, tennis and sailing, when tennis came along, that really flooded. We had so many more members wanted to play, female members wanted to play, and they found that, they again became to a very, very high standard.
It's great to see sort of the growth of sport, particularly during that era. We've actually just had a question submitted on Facebook, Roy, and it was a young lady asking about how you see the difference between what the Paralympics were and how they are now.
I see. Well, the plus side now is that there is, with lottery funding, obviously, if you're good enough, you can become a full-time athlete. You can have, the equipment, the support, the medical support, the training, and obviously in some cases you can have, your own, whether it be a front rider or your own guide runner. So on that side, as a full-time job and enjoyment, absolutely fantastic. the slightly downside from that is that there's less people are experiencing the international. I was very disappointed in the amount of VI people that were, say, the London Paralympics in 2012. You know, and again, repeatedly, there's less VI people now. The percentage has gone right down, whereas you know, I hope that the World Games, you know, again, BBS involved heavily in 2023 in Birmingham, that the World Games will be just the World Games for the blind. And we have an opportunity in this country to showcase, you know, we go back to this thing of, you know, we'll have the A standards of people getting, but let's try and blood some new people to start their journey, you know, into this fabulous world of, you know, competing around the world, you know, at a very high level. In the 80s, I would think there were maybe 50 or 60 countries involved. Now in the Paralympic movement, it may be 180 countries involved in the Paralympics. So again, the standard, the amount of participation has increased. So I would think that's the big difference. It's now lottery funded, there's a load more support. And it's also linked as well, I think, which is a good thing. It's much more dovetailed into the national governing body. So like UK Athletics from England, Lawn Tennis Association, for example, you know, British Cycling, you know, have all now integrated. I think that's obviously from Sport England funding, lottery funding, that they totally include people with a disability within their, you know, lottery bid and within their program. And that's obviously a very good thing. But again, it's a numbers game. We just need to increase the numbers and the opportunity, especially for the 35,000 children that are in mainstream schools, you know, that they have somewhere to go into their club, their local running club, and that the coaches have had that awareness training and they're accepted. I mean, that's the great step forward now, that coaching, again, the national governing bodies have included that awareness training within their coaching level badges. So they're not, you know, shocked or frightened of, you know, if somebody with a disability turns up at their local track or local swimming pool.
Yeah,
Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. Right. I mean, with that, you know, exposure and different sort of a big growth in the Paralympic movement, I suppose that's led to the national governing bodies taking a bit more of a lead on that, because the exposure to people is much greater than probably what it was back in the late 70s and early 80s.
Well, this is where sort of BBS took a step backwards, because then the national governing bodies, instead of BBS's, it was their main job to raise all the money and prepare all the teams. The national governing bodies started organising their own training weekends and their own Pacific, you know, integrated with their own teams. So yes, certainly standards improved again. Went to another level, because, you know, again, the equipment, you know, British cycling equipment, the facilities of using the tracks and accommodation. So, but you know, at the beginning, the purple patch from the beginning was, you know, down to people, you know, like you know, the Ron Gordons and the you know, Mike Braces at Metro, and people that put a lot of work in. I mean, Mike, not at, you know, National Paralympic Committee, but also, you know, became chairman of British Paralympic Association. So as VI people, we started getting voices at that national governing body. David, as you know, I mean, I chaired BBS for a short period of time. Again, there was people at that level that were, you know, because they've had so much fun and rewards from being involved in sport, wanted to share it more with other people, get more and more people taking part, really, at whatever level, really, whatever their level they'd like to. You know.
Yeah, and that's something that BBS still now try to do, increase that participation rate.
Yes.
Just as we're getting sort of to the end of our podcast this morning, Roy, one question I've got for you is, you know, if you could go back and look at your whole sporting and sort of the work that you've done within sport, what one single moment would you like to relive if you had the chance to?
Yeah, I suppose very much on a personal thing. Then, you know, 1990, I was in the Queen's Honours List, named as the MBE. So I went to the Palace in 1990, November 90. And I went with my mum and my wife, and a few months after that, my mum passed away, and it was just fabulous. You know, the photographs from that day, which I obviously treasure, of my mum. And my mum at the time, obviously, then somebody, you know, the condition I had was a carrier, and it came out, and she used to, I said, Mum, this just proves, that despite the sight loss, you can achieve. And I think she was proud, and I was obviously very proud of my dad. So yeah, I think looking back, that was the sort of thing. But I think mass participation, linked with that, then is the growth of hundreds of people doing tennis, and hundreds of people, the work BBS now of reaching more people, the growth of 20 odd clubs playing cricket now, and umpteen clubs playing football clubs. It's that growth now. The opportunities available, to children and young people to enjoy the fun and the rewards from being, sporting activities.
Yes, definitely. So the final question, which has been submitted via one of our audience, Roy, which is, if you could give one young person a little bit of advice or guidance of how to sort of participate in sport, what would that be?
I keep mentioning the word fun, but I think I would certainly try, a young person would try a little bit of everything first, enjoy, experience the sort of, the running, depends what site level you're at, but again, with friends and volunteers, have a go at everything. I mean, a great encouragement, swimming pools now put lane ropes down to make it easier for people, so that, again, that safety value. Learn to swim, and if you're struggling with that, again, contact Metro and other people. Do some one-to-one coaching. Learn to swim. Make sure you embrace all the opportunities. Have a go at tandem riding, whether indoors in the velodrome, which is really exciting, outdoors on the track, the running and the jumping and the throwing. Enjoy it all, and then see which one you enjoy the most. Have a game of cricket. Have a game of football. Enjoy all the sports that are now available. Enjoy climbing. Enjoy all the activities, and then later, maybe choose the one that you enjoy the most and think, I wouldn't mind competing at this. I wouldn't mind taking it to another level. Find a local club, find a level coach, especially things like judo, go along to your local club. And so this wide range which is available to people, and coaches at a very high level. One of the school teachers at Worcester College who used to coach used to say that, if you're totally blind and you want to run, then run on your own, run to a caller, maybe 40, 50 meters, using both your arms, both your legs, learn to run individually, enjoy the fun of running free on your own. And then when you want to run faster and you want to run longer distances around bends, link up with but learn to run freely on your own. Enjoy the freedom of running in an open space, could be a disused football pitch, or just enjoy the run of freedom of running on your own, especially if you're totally blind. And then once you've got your head and your arms and your legs in the right position, John Anderson was really, really keen on drills at high knees, back kicks, head up high, skipping high, just that movement of arms and legs, coordination was his, trade word, get coordinating. And then whatever sport you've done, once you've got that coordination, you'll find that your use of a white cane, your mobility around, once you've got that basic coordination, life of getting around, your alertness to sounds, reaction to movement pays off. So I'd recommend to anybody, get involved in the basics of sport. It will help your mobility and your reactions. And I think your character, so if you're looking for a job, you're much more alert. You've got something to offer. You've got something to talk about. And you've met more people because you've met people in clubs, and you've started to be somebody that you've taken an interest in things around you.
That's fantastic advice, Roy. I'd like to thank you for joining us this morning. You've been a fantastic athlete to interview. I've learned a hell of a lot around the Paralympic movement, and it's great to hear your story. Also, thank you to everybody who joined us and listened in this morning. We have our next podcast on Friday, the 11th of September, where we actually have Paralympic skier Mike Brace joining us. So please tune in then. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you, David. Goodbye to everybody. Keep safe and enjoy life.
Thank you, Roy. It's been fantastic.